The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you in Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here on a Tuesday, getting closer and closer to opening day. We'll have some baseball talk coming up here around the corner. We'll talk some Cincinnati Bengals. Any update on Trey Hendrickson? We get to turn our attention towards him now with the waiting game starting to pile up as far as that goes. NIL or the transfer portal, which one is impacted or negatively hurt college athletics more? We have that, and then a couple more likely scenarios. But, yeah, I came out rapid fire. Sorry, guys. I've had a lot of coffee. I'm a little jittery right now, but we're off and rolling. Guys, good morning. How are we? How are we feeling here today on this cold, rainy Tuesday morning, or at least
I'm good. I'm good. Something I did, I think, forget or just kind of memory hole over the last like 2 or 3 weeks when it's been nice outside is when it's not nice outside, this studio sucks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, absolute icebox in here. It is so cold. Shout out to Kinner for not being here because that means we get to use the headsets and they double as earmuffs. So my ears were very cold before we started the show today. Now they're warming up quite a bit. Fingers going quickly, though.
Very cold. I can't express how cold it is in here. It's colder in here than it is outside. But who cares? It's a Tuesday. We're back. I'm going to be more positive today. Everybody said I was too negative yesterday, Kinner, so I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be so positive.
Are you going to be too positive where it's very sarcastic and everyone gets more mad?
Probably, yeah. I'm going to be dangerously sarcastic today with how positive I am about your Cincinnati Reds. But that's just how I am. So, I mean, I don't know what else I can do. I can try to be positive to a point where everybody hates me, or I can be negative to a point where everybody hates me.
Those are the only two options.
There's no middle ground in this dojo.
Jacob, let's test this theory. All right, Elliot, kick us off. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a World Series contender are the Cincinnati Reds on a scale of 1 to 10?
I've already written this season off as a World Series championship contender team, so this season's over. I'm more on to next year. Next year's about Nate.
Okay.
Next year's about Nate if they can go back-to-back.
All right, Elly De La Cruz or Shohei Ohtani, who is the MVP for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, Elly De La Cruz is the greatest baseball player, man, woman, or child to ever pick up a glove or a bat. So I'm going to take Elly De La Cruz to be the greatest baseball player in the history of mankind.
Noave Marte.
162-0.
Noave Marte, what's his comeback player of the year chance?
0.
Oh, no, we got him. We got him.
2 for 3 at the plate. I like it. But Casey, good morning. Got a funny-ass text from you yesterday. Monday Night Raw, WWE, was live on Netflix at an earlier start time because they're overseas right now. And Casey sends the group a text saying, this is the only bit of sports I've been able to watch lately, and it's a screenshot of Monday Night Raw. How was your sports viewing pleasure yesterday, Casey?
Yeah, it was good. I'm starting to enjoy Raw like never before. I just don't think like before I couldn't find reasons to get invested, but after this John Cena storyline, I mean, I'm just locked in. I got to find out if he can just win a championship and go out guns a-blazing. I'm just like all about it right now. All about it. I'm going to catch it on Friday? They have one on Friday for or is it next Monday? I don't quite remember when the next one is, but I'll be tuning into that. And yeah, other than that, like I've been super busy with like putting together the nursery. I'm getting ready for this baby, and we're trying to find ways to save money. And so we decided that we were going to cut my Planet Fitness membership, and I was going to go buy a at-home workout station, cable station. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this stuff before. It is crazy, the smart home workout stations that are all cable-based. Crazy.
And it just like does the weight itself or whatever with resistance?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so I've been looking into getting that, and that's what has been taking up most of my time. Instead of watching March Madness, it's been nursery, trying to build a at-home gym, and Raw. So, yeah.
Couldn't be me. I need March Madness.
Jacob, stop laughing at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm putting it in the chat because I can't say it on here. So, you know.
Casey, yeah.
I mean, he loves Raw so much he's building a nursery. Let's not act like that's not funny, guys.
There's a lot of dots to connect.
Come on, guys.
For mature audiences only here off the bench, presented by. We don't need to bring the sponsor into this. I'm sorry. But anyways, we are off and rolling here on a Tuesday. Let's kick off the show with Elliot's headlines.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
Not a ton. USC, they dominated in the round of 32, the women's tournament. USC dominated in the round of 32 over Mississippi State, 96-59. However, Juju Watkins suffered a season-ending torn ACL, so they win by 40, and at what cost? They lose Juju Watkins for the remainder of the tournament. Maryland, they came back from 17. They stunned Alabama in double overtime, 111-108. NC State, they destroyed Michigan State.
Whoa.
Excuse me?
If we're going to do box score shout-outs for the other games, Lady on Alabama had 48 points. It was the highest-scoring SEC game in women's tournament history.
Okay. All right. Didn't see it. NC State destroyed Michigan State 83-49. UConn, they win 91-57. A lot of close games yesterday over the 10-seed South Dakota State. North Carolina, they get past Virginia 58-47. 3-seeded LSU. How about a 30-point win over Florida State? And 6-seeded Iowa was handed a 96-62 loss to Oklahoma. That is an outrageous number of blowouts.
Yeah, I'm not going to act like I watch any round of the women's tournament, but if I was going to, I would start in the Sweet 16 at the earliest.
Yeah,
these games are ridiculous blowouts.
I don't know why.
There was a 50-point win in there.
Yeah,
a few.
That's tough. Let's go to a tournament that doesn't matter at all, the CBI. Incarnate Word beat Jacksonville 87-71. That game tipped off, I think, at 11:30 yesterday. Florida Gulf Coast, they beat the Army 68-65. And Cleveland State, they won by 15 against Queens University. How about the Horizon? The Horizon's still alive, still dancing in late March, Kinner. Good for you.
1.5 wins this last week. I mean, the CBI win and a half a win by not getting embarrassed by Alabama in the tournament for old Bob Moe.
That's true.
So,
That's right. That's right.
Do you think those teams would rather be in the prestigious crown?
I think so. The crown, when you put on the crown after a crown championship, it's a feeling like any other, unlike any other.
Like it's a feeling like any other.
By the way,
it's like driving to work.
It's like riding a bike.
Wait, how about Cleveland State? By the way, the week that they announced they're going to the CBI, they had this big article that came out in the paper about how that school is just in like financial hell. Like they have no money coming in, they are like losing money left and right. And then you announce that you're joining a tournament that you have to pay money to join. Like athletics, they were a good team and they like lost money on the season. Like they're losing money left and right. And then they go ahead and they spend thousands of dollars to join this tournament or whatever. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, the CBI, it needs to go away. No one cares about the CBI.
I think it's great. It's another historic tournament that needs to be played at
the
same time as March Madness. NBA, going over to the NBA, Devin Booker, he hit the game-winning jumper last night in the Suns' 108-106 win over the Bucks. Durant, he dropped 38 as well. The Celtics, they get another win over the Kings, 113-95. Tatum appears to be, quote, okay after he had to leave the game with an ankle injury.
Close your eyes real quick.
Okay.
When you picture Jason Tatum, what do you see?
I don't know, like 20, 26 a night?
Yeah.
It's something crazy
Nothing.
like that. The Mavericks, they get back Anthony Davis. He scored 12 in a limited game yesterday. They win 120-101 over the Nets.
Love that.
The playoff Mavs might have something cooking here.
Yeah, but I mean the playoff Mavs, one of 22 teams
Correct.
in a 30-team league.
They're in the playoffs. It counts. The Pacers, they dominate the Timberwolves 119-103. And the Lake Show. The Lake Show, unfortunately, they lose again with LeBron and Luke on the court. This time it's to the Magic, 118-104. to 106.
Well, it's because
Luka
they didn't
dropped
have their
32.
best player. Their best player is still in South Bay. Bronny James last night dropped 39 points
Wow.
and 7 rebounds, 4 assists on 70% from the field. So
Wow.
really finding his groove in the G League.
Wow.
Real quick, is he like? Because I'm willing to admit I'm wrong. Is he good?
He's more
I mean,
points.
I'm being serious.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
being
more-
serious. Like,
More points in the NBA and G League than any other second-round pick in this draft class. So at the very least, it's not a dumb pick anymore. That at least has been thrown out. We can still argue whether or not he'd be at this point without his dad being LeBron, but I think at this point he's proven that he's as good as any other guy drafted in the 50s.
Is there a award for like G League Player of the Year?
Yeah, he'll probably win Rookie of the Year.
I was gonna say I would imagine that he's on pace for that.
He might
the way
not play enough games because
Okay.
he's going back and forth from the NBA to the G League, playing a lot of home games in the NBA. He might not reach the games requirement, but in terms of everything all-star wise and everything like that, that's why he wasn't on those teams. Those stats are towards the top of the G League.
Good for him. Good for Bronny. Good for Bronny. But those are your headlines.
all right, there you go. Elliot's headlines to kick off the show here today. Yeah, I'd asked that about Bronny. And by the way, it's ironic too because like he won't play enough games in the G League to get G League Player of the Year, and it's because he's too good because he keeps getting playing for the Lakers at the
Yeah.
same time. Not too good, but you know what I mean. Very weird.
Right.
G League is such a weird setup to begin with. But nonetheless, all right, we got some Reds talk coming up around the corner. That's where we'll turn our attention towards. Obviously, we're going to continue testing the theory of the positivity of Elliott as he spearheads today with the new outlook on life, apparently. So we'll get to that
That's right.
coming up. But it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But at the same time, the start to the season, very important for the Reds. We talked yesterday about the unfortunate, list, the IL list that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, right? Like Alexis Diaz being added to the list on the IL, along with Andrew Abbott, Spencer Steer, and Tyler Stephenson. But with that being said, no excuses. The Reds still have to get off to a hot start in April to kind of set the tone. It seems like on a regular occurrence, the Reds are constantly digging themselves out of a hole after a slow start early in the season. The case this year, we're going to take a look at the Reds' record looking over the last 10 years. What is the Reds' record in each month over the last 10 years, and how do they stack up in the month of April? It's a tough schedule. How will the Reds look coming out on the other side? We'll talk about all that and more when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett. We are back with you here. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton, Ohio. Okay, we open up the show with Elliot's headlines. We turn our attention towards the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds opening day coming up just a few days from now. For whatever reason, not a fan of it. They're going to be in Dayton tonight playing, at Day-Air Ballpark. Dayton fans, Reds fans, baseball fans in the city, they're all excited about it. I'm not. After all the injuries we talked about yesterday, you survived spring training. You survived it. You come back. To come back, step foot at Day-Air Ballpark, and potentially have an injury or two, I don't want that. I don't want to risk it. I don't think it's necessary or worth it. I don't think that all of a sudden the Reds have no fans, but then after playing at Day-Air Ballpark today, all of a sudden they have millions of fans. Like you could tell me all the community outreach stuff that this is going to do. It's not going to do enough to justify risking the health of this roster. Now I'm being negative, but that's the reality of it. I hate fun, apparently, so it is what it is. But the Reds, the real season kicks off coming up on Thursday, and you take obviously with the Giants. I think they play the Giants like 6 times in the first month and some change of the season. But look, historically the Reds at times have really struggled in the month of April. They get off to a bad start, and then they spend, the next couple of months before the All-Star break trying to dig themselves out of a hole. Then they kind of tease you a little bit mathematically still in the wild card hunt. But again, we've been burned before, so we don't truly buy into just how close they actually are. The month of April is going to be very important to kind of set the tone because there were so many question marks about this team coming into the season, even if we're Elliot, yesterday you're saying how negative you were. I have a feeling, and this isn't like me saying you're a negative fan. I think there's a lot of people who are cautiously optimistic about this team. We're being cautiously optimistic with these injuries. I think we'd be cautiously optimistic even if they were fully healthy. I still think even a healthy Spencer Steer and Tyler Stephenson, I don't think we're sitting here saying, we 1,000,000% feel confident that they're winning this division or making the playoffs. So I think those injuries have kind of set back expectations a little bit. But how important is the first month of this season? I'm just going to take March and bleed it into April. I'm not even going to count the fact that opening day is on March 27th as talking March baseball. I'm going to put those 3 games into the month of April as we sit here right now. How important is it for the Reds to get off to a hot start? It's the Terry Francona era. A lot of same players from last year. So there's going to be a lot of people that when you see certain guys, you're going to have that, it's going to take you back to the recent history of bad memories of this team losing and not living up to expectations. How important is it for the Reds to erase the David Bell era and for Terry Francona and company to kind of set the tone, get off to a hot start, and get fans to buy in and believe early? I think the month of April is super important for the Reds. I know people say it's a 162-game season. Who cares? I still think April is a very important month for your Reds.
Yeah, I mean, starting off hot is everything. I mean, you saw it last year with several teams, but the Reds specifically, they were okay, I think, through March and April. I believe they had a winning record. And then you got to May, they went 9-18. And after that, again, they had a winning record in June, a winning record in July. In August, the Reds never are good in August. So it's all about starting hot early. It's to give yourself a better chance because it's just about extending that line of we can make the playoffs if we just do this, if we just do that. Well, you got to just stay in the fight. There's no 3-18 season like we had under what's his name, Brian Price. Like you can't have that kind of start. It just kills your season right off the rip. This year, if they start off hot, and I know the first half of the month at least is pretty tough for the Reds here in late March and early April. But if you're able to survive that and you're able to have a winning record and you're able to be top half of this division, then yeah, I'm going to say you're going to have a chance all the way home. So it means a lot. Again, the Reds were 2-1 in March last year, 14-13 in April. They went 9-18 in May. So it's the first 2 months are very crucial for the Cincinnati Reds to be competitive.
You just can't have that 1 month that you're circling in September and saying if we just change this 1 month, we're in the race. That's exactly what it was last year, at least for a bulk of that time. I know at the end all those teams ended up hot and playoffs ended a lot further up in the win column than we expected, but if the Reds would have changed that May around and kept everything else the entire season the same, they're in that mix late in the season.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different feeling in this city, in this locker room with this team, and who even knows who's managing the ball club this year if that changes. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people are holding on to with the switch from David Bell to Terry Francona is a slide like that will not happen.
Yep.
He'll be able to get them out of that rut before it gets to a point where it derails the entire season, and I think that's the hope. And I think that's why I'm more or less, glad is probably the wrong word, but finding some positives in playing a little bit of a harder schedule off the rip. We have the Giants, obviously, to start, and then the Rangers who won the World Series a couple years ago, and then straight to Milwaukee. We'll know how we match up with the top of this league and the top of this division, or at least who's been at the top of this division for the last many years, very, very quickly. And we'll know how much this team has changed in terms of their ability to compete with those teams. And I think that'll be good for Reds fans and the players as well, especially if they are able to start well, to see it against those really good teams or those teams that you haven't been able to get over the hump against before you go into the end of the month against Miami and Colorado. I think that's, you really have a chance here to teach these young players that, hey, we are contenders this year. This isn't another rebuilding year. We're here to compete. We're going to go up to Milwaukee in the third series of the year, and we're going to win that series. And we're going to go play Texas, and we're going to win. Then we're going to go out to San Francisco, and we're going to win. And these are teams that are supposed to be a tier above the Reds, or at least have been in years past. And if you can show these young players and even the fan base that hey, we're on a different level this year and we're ready to compete right out the gate. I think that means so much for, just how many butts are in seats. And we know how big of a difference that makes for a team and the vibe around a club throughout the entirety of the season. So if they can start out hot, that's about as big as it can get, especially this year when we don't have the outfield signings or the roster change in the offseason to grab onto. Usually that's what you're doing right now. You're so excited to see a bunch of guys in the uniform for the first time going into this year. And like you said, it's more or less the same lineup that we've seen before. So I think the only way that they're going to be able to really throw the expectations through the roof, it's going to be starting hot. And that's how you're going to get a lot of people on board.
Again, how important is April baseball? And a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. Well, ironically enough, I went back and kind of tallied all of this. 9 of the last 10 years, the team that won the World Series was first in their division at the end of the month of April. The only team that was not in first at the end of the month of April that won a World Series was back in 21, I believe, with the Braves, and they were like 2 games under 500 and third in their division, and then they caught fire, got healthy, and they were fine the rest of the way. But yeah, outside of that, 9 of the last 10 World Series champions all in first place at the end of the first month of the season. So I get why people say it doesn't matter. And by the way, is there a direct correlation between that? Could we look at the teams who are in first at the end of April and say, well, one of those 6 teams is going to win a World Series? I guess that number kind of puts you in position to have the best opportunity to do so. Look, we've seen teams get off to hot starts and ending up fizzle out by the end of the season. The Pirates were one of those last year. They weren't in first. But again, you'd rather be on the right side of some of these numbers and just put yourself in position to be at the highest point of the division as you possibly can. If it's at the very top, great. But the Reds have to get off to a very good start here in the month of April. And it's interesting because I went back and looked at this as well. The Reds records, going back the last 10 years to 2015, the Reds record in the month of April, let's put it this way. How many months over the last 10 years, if you look at it by month, how many months of the season do you think the Reds actually have a 500 record in throughout the season for the last 10 years?
I bet it's better than you think because it feels like their bad months are always just absolutely horrendous.
I'm going to say 3. I'm going to say 3 months.
Jacob?
I'll go right around there. I'll say 4. I'll go 1 above. Price is Right this.
All right, so there is only 1 month in the last 10 years that the Reds have had a winning record.
That's fun.
And I'm with you guys. I would have thought that May would have been their best month, right? Like I always feel like they start out slow and then they kind of get hot, and then they kind of fizzle out into June, and then you have the All-Star break, in the next month. Their only month with the winning record since 2015, and of course this is the month of July. The month of July is the only month that they have a record above 500 since 2015, and they are in that span 117 and 116. They are 1 game above 500. That is the only month in the last 10 years that they have had a record above 500 going over that stretch. Their worst month, what do you think their worst month is of the season? Which month do you think that they are just the most abysmal in over the last 10 years?
It's got to be the end of the year, right?
I would say August is my bet. August or September. I'm going to say August.
I'll take the other one.
I'm going to go with shows here that the month of April is their worst month.
Wow.
The worst month of April. October too. It includes the October ones, but we don't count October. April, they've won 40% of their games in the month of April. That is the lowest win percentage of all the months included. Now, March says 3-5, so that technically, but as far as like a full month of games,
hey,
April,
sweep the Giants, get another month over 500.
That's right. That's right.
There we go.
There's that
steps.
positivity. That's that positivity.
We're a new club now with Tito at the helm. That's what we say, 10 wins?
Yeah.
10 wins.
But no, again, to almost a repeated question a bit, but obviously when it comes to the Reds and important, getting off to hot starts important. They've won 40% of their games. They have 40% of their games is what they have won in the month of April going back to 2015. That win percentage is not good enough, obviously, but also going back to that number I threw out too, where the last 10 World Series champions, 9 of them all in first place in their division at the end of that month. Is there a correlation there? Do you think there's something there? Obviously, those are the teams that are starting to separate themselves 1 month in. But again, I know you can't win anything in April, but you sure as hell can lose it. And the Reds are a prime example of that. They play really well in some months, but April is their worst month when it comes to the last 10 years.
No, I mean, if you take a look at the Detroit Tigers last year when they went on their little run at the end of the season, it got them into the playoffs, and it was a magical run. That's an outlier. It's hard, what Kinner said earlier. It's when you finish strong, right? It's okay if you're not the hottest out of the gate. If you finish strong, you got to be hot out of the gate. That's just what it is. And if I mean, the correlation is usually teams that start hot are good teams.
Right.
I mean, it's a pretty simple correlation. The Reds have not been hot out of the gate. They have not been a very good team in my lifetime. And I'm going to try to be positive, but they haven't been very good since the year 2000.
Just say they've been good.
They've been good.
Just lie.
And I think that going forward, if you want to see the team be competitive later on, you want to see them be fighting for a division crown in late August and September, then you have to start April and May with winning records. It's just moving that goalpost down until the end of the season, as far as you can move it down. And set yourself up for at least an easier September than the Reds have had in the past. Like even when they went that COVID year, I don't know if you remember the COVID year, Kinner, but the Reds were terrible that year, and they got hot. They beat the Pirates, I want to say 35 times in the last month, and they snuck in. But again, they made it difficult for themselves to get into the playoffs. Right? Start off hot, come out of the gates swinging away, strong, and maybe the Reds will have a shot at something. I don't know what. Because I found this nugget too. The Reds have never, and since Jacob has been born, have never finished second in the division.
Ooh.
They finished first, obviously, twice, and they've never finished second in the division. So I don't know what our preconceived expectations of the Cincinnati Reds are this year. I think they're a second probably dog in the division. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's either first, if you ain't the Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you're last for the Reds. So if you want to try to be first, you have to start out April hot. You have to.
Teams that lead their divisions win the World Series feels very similar to me as like the teams that run the ball 40 times a game win the game. Like of course they do. I feel like good teams win championships, and what good teams are early. I mean, we can say as much as we want, especially we do it with the Bengals a lot. I do it with the Bengals a lot. Slow start doesn't matter. Well, we obviously haven't won a Super Bowl, and the teams that do win those Super Bowls usually start hot, or at least figure it out very quickly. And if the Reds are going to compete for a World Series this year, we're going to know very quickly what this team's about. I mean, we can hold our breath and hope we get healthy and everything along those lines. Maybe we make a push for the playoffs at the end of the year, but that would be all that is. If the Reds are a legitimate contender, you know that out the gate, because the 1 or 2 or 3 injuries doesn't derail your season. So that's what I think is the biggest telltale sign there is you're dealing with a lot of stuff right out of the gate. You're dealing with spring training. Obviously, everyone is dealing with some level of injuries. Guys aren't playing to their fullest potential because it's their first time, playing big league baseball in a while. So the good teams are the ones that can overcome that, and I guess that's the hope a lot of people have in Cincinnati this year is we finally have a great manager, so maybe that'll make us a good team and be able to overcome a lot of those things, and I certainly hope they're right. But we'll know a lot about this Reds team by the time they play the Cardinals on May 1st.
The Reds obviously open with the Giants for 3 at home, and then 3 more at home with Texas. Their schedule is kind of wonky, like as far as like they'll get two teams at home, 6 games, the first 6 games of the season at home, and then they go on the road for 7, 4 at Milwaukee, 3 at San Francisco. Then they return home for 2 series at home again, 3 with Pittsburgh, 3 with Seattle, and then they go on the road for 3 with Colorado, 3 with Miami, 3 with Baltimore. I mean, they go on the road from April 18th and don't come back home until April 28th. I mean, that's 10 days on the road, and then you come home finally to a division matchup with the Cardinals. But, yeah, there's a lot of road games that the Reds have, 2 extended road trips that they're going to have in the month of April. I thought the schedule was kind of wonky as far as maybe that's normal across baseball. I just thought that stood out where a couple home series and then you hit the road for 2 or 3 series. Long extended road trips too in the month of April, and that's even before we get to those West Coast trips where the Reds are always so successful in.
To be fair, 6 of those 9 are against terrible teams. With all due respect to the Rockies and the Marlins, those organizations are trash.
You think they bring re-signs up for those?
Huh?
You think they bring re-signs?
They should bring up
for those 2
re-signs.
series?
They should bring up re-signs. It worked last year. But yeah, if the Reds, I'm going to say this right now, if the Reds don't have a winning record in those 2 series, I'm going to have a problem.
Fair enough. All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. I tell you what, I'm not a Bengals fan, as you guys know, but I'm so happy that they got those damn deals done with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, because we no longer have to talk about what are we going to do with T. Higgins. Are they going to get T. Higgins deal done? And it seemed like there was a lot of momentum towards getting a deal done with Trey Hendrickson, and it felt like they were close. And now it's just kind of crickets a little bit. What do you guys make of the silence when it comes to the contract negotiations with Trey Hendrickson? We'll pick up with that conversation on the other side. More Off the Bench when we return. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Opened up the show with some headlines. We dove right into the Cincinnati Reds opening day coming up a few days from now. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. That's what we constantly hear. It's a long season, 162 games. Bottom line is there's a lot of interesting nuggets out there that there's a correlation between the teams who are sitting at the top of the division at the end of the month of April. Well, 9 of the last 10 World Series champions were all sitting in first place in their division at the end of the first month of the season. So I get what people are saying. I think we try to temper expectations. The Reds get out to a bad start. Well, it's okay. We still have May, June, July, and August and September to go. Yes, but a lot of the teams that have shown that they're World Series caliber teams, they don't ease into the season. They come out swinging and firing, and that's what I'm expecting from the Reds, even with a lot of the injuries that they're battling up against. But that we kind of took a look at the Reds' record over the last 10 years, month by month, and they only have one winning month, one month with the record above 500 over the last 10 years, and that's July. 117 wins, 116 losses. So just slightly above 500, but 500 at that. But we'll get back into the Reds more here in a bit. Let's transition over to the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk about the T and Jamar Chase contracts. Some more stuff came out on that here in a moment. But I did feel like, okay, once they got the deal done with Jamar and T. Higgins, it was either going to be a quick decision on whether they were going to keep Trey or not, or get him done to an extension early. And it seemed like there was a lot of reports out there, people kind of teasing some stuff that they're close to getting a deal done, and everyone's doing the eyeball emojis and all this stuff. People with their fake sources, they're hearing that, okay, they're close to getting a deal done. But it's been silent. It's been crickets a little bit. I'm not sure what your guys' actual expectations were for the amount of time between T and Jamar's deal getting done and when we would finally hear Trey Hendrickson's decision, if that's what you want to call it. Are you feeling less confident now that a deal's going to get done as we've gotten further away from the other extensions with the other two, or was this always going to be this gap of time after? Or was it always going to take this much time now that he's their only sole focus with the other two taken care of?
I don't know that an extension is going to get done. Trey Hendrickson will play for the Bengals in 2025. 100%, no question about it in my mind. I mean, he can threaten to sit out and retire and everything that he did last year. And what did he do last year, week 1? He
played.
strapped his helmet up and rushed the passer. So I'm not really worried about a Trey Hendrickson holdout. That seems to be where everyone's at right now. Jeremy Fowler reporting on March 23rd that, quote, I think it's entirely possible, based on what I'm hearing, for him to sit out this year if he doesn't get a new deal. I do think that is the mindset he's in right now. It doesn't seem like the Bengals are going to make a trade. That's not going to happen. The value's not coming in. Ian Rappaport was on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, and he said the Colts and Lou Anarumo, obviously Bengals DC for the last many years, do have interest in Trey Hendrickson, but haven't come close to meeting the Bengals' asking price. That's really the first news in a long time that we've heard about a potential trade, but he followed that up by immediately saying the Bengals have no intention of letting him leave the building and are working very hard to keep him. So I think this is an open conversation. I think the two options for Trey Hendrickson are play on $16.5 million or sign an extension with the Bengals. I don't think there is a third option. Maybe that third option is he misses 1 or 2 weeks. I think that's probably the max in my mind. I really have limited to no worries about Trey Hendrickson playing for the Bengals next year. I think that's a case closed.
Again, I did this last year. I'm going to continue to do it. I don't care. If you want to sit out and you want to pay fines, it's your prerogative. Go ahead and do it. I'm not going to stop you. But I have a hard time believing that Trey Hendrickson is just going to sit out or retire or whatever else he's going to threaten to do. So in terms of will the Bengals be making a deal with Trey Hendrickson, I don't know. I think I still believe that there's going to be some sort of adjustment to that contract before this season. I think it's the easiest thing to do other than deal with whatever threats he has. So I think you pay him whatever for this season and you're just done with it. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't think they're extending him for 3 years. Maybe you get a 2-year deal done. I don't know, but even so, a 2-year deal done, he would just sit out next year too. So it doesn't matter to me. I'm less concerned about Trey Hendrickson than I've ever been. I want him to be here. I'd like him to play under the contract that he signed, that his agent created. If that's not the case, I think the Bengals would survive.
If that's not the case, go get the value you promised us.
Correct. Like that's all this comes down to. And should the Bengals have paid him earlier? Sure, I guess. But they also did pay him early, and then the contract was bad in hindsight. Like I'm done with making deals with him. If he wants to go pout, that's his choice. Go ahead and pout.
I've seen a lot of people saying, well, I mean, why not just give him a 2-year deal? What makes you think next offseason he's not holding out? They've done that twice, and he just does this again when he has a great season. So what happens next year when he gets 20 sacks and wins Defensive Player of the Year and he's getting paid $30 million and the market resets at the beginning of the offseason with Micah Parsons? Is he holding out again?
Probably.
What tells you he won't?
Yeah.
So, I really have no interest in bending down to his demands or anything along those lines in terms of an extension. I think exactly what Elliot said is by far the most likely situation. A 1-year rework of this extension, probably pretty incentive laden in terms of you get, a couple $1 million for sack goals and everything along those lines. And you play for 1 year on a contract up towards or above $30 million, and then we part our ways. But I don't think a 31-year-old Trey Hendrickson benefits whatsoever from sitting out for an entire year, especially coming off back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons. You are finally a household name for the first time in your career, and at 31 years old, you're going to sit on a couch for 17 games? I'm not buying that, because that costs you a lot more than just the fines you'd be paying this year. That costs you a second contract. And all he said all offseason is that the only thing he cares about is long-term security and financial security for him and his family, though they might not get that in Cincinnati. Not playing your age 31 season basically assures you're not getting that anywhere. So I don't think there's any chance that he holds out this year, which is why my level of concern is so low.
I could see him holding out because of this reason only. Like last year, obviously he demanded he put the trade request out, him and his agent. And then Trey Hendrickson did the same thing, not happy with the compensation. So he put the trade out there as well. And then after a little bit, and again, keep in mind, a year ago at this time, we felt with the Bengals, even before the draft, we're heading into the next season with Joe Burrow healthy, a Super Bowl contender. And some people believe they are a Super Bowl contender now, but I think that the vibes from expectations standpoint are significantly lower than a year ago at this time as far as the makeup of the team and the roster as far as that goes. T. Higgins and Hendrickson both came out right before camp and said we didn't want to be a distraction. T ended up signing the tender, I think, in like June or whatever. I remember Jay Morrison coming on and saying he was shocked at how early he just went ahead and said, forget it, let me just sign this. And he didn't want to be a distraction because of the special season that was coming up. It was the first camp coming up where Joe Burrow was going to be completely healthy and ready to go. Hendrickson came out and said he rescinded his trade request because he didn't want to be a distraction. Super Bowl contending team wanted to go out there and compete. Those were quotes from both of those guys last year. So they put their interest to the side for the betterment of the team. Team won 9 games, went 9-8, missed the playoffs. They sacrificed, I guess, in their eyes, their happiness last year in regards to money to put the team first, and it backfired. I don't know if he truly was willing to sit out last year or miss games last year for the trade request. He put it to the side because he thought they had a good chance at winning a Super Bowl. This team is not as good as what we thought last year, even as of right now, depending on what they do in the draft. I could see that swaying him to say he's going to play hardball just a little bit more. Hey, I put the team first last year and it backfired on me. I'm not putting the team first this year. I'm putting me first. But to Elliot's point, do you want to get fined? Are you willing to, if you're mad at how little you're making now, you're only going to make less by sitting out of games. I don't think he holds out the season. I think maybe he misses a game or two. Look, we've talked about all these different scenarios as far as how he could play it out. I do see him being a little bit more aggressive in his negotiation stance, if you will, more than last year, because he got bit last year because the team's success didn't come with what he was trying to sacrifice the distractionness for. So we'll see what happens. But I see it a little different than last year.
Yeah, the Bengals also don't have the financial flexibility they had at the beginning of the offseason because of the way they structured these Jamar and T. Higgins contracts, which Casey's going to talk about here in a little bit. And I think that's why this is going to take months longer. I don't think this is getting taken care of maybe until during training camp. Yeah. I think at some point when Trey Hendrickson finally does hold out, the Bengals will cave and give him a slight bonus for this year. He'll probably play at around $26 to $28 million. That's my guess right now. Maybe it gets worse than that. Maybe he doesn't sign a one-year extension. But I don't even know if last year didn't work out for him. Are we sure it didn't work out for him? I would say not working out for him would be he goes out there last year, underperforms, and he's like, okay, well, I guess I'm playing on 16.5 this year. Yeah. I think being able to hold out after signing a 2-year extension on both years of said extension works out pretty well for you, especially at age 30. He's going to get more money this offseason. It's just a matter of when. We would all like it to happen before it becomes a distraction in training camp. I don't think it will. We've talked about nonstop on this program. Every insider we've had on this program has said the Bengals don't blink. Mike Brown doesn't blink. They're not going to start blinking now at Trey Hendrickson when they have less money than they've ever had. So this is going to be a nuisance and a talking point for the entirety of the offseason. And I just don't care.
Yeah,
he's going to play.
It's silly to think that he's going to retire. It really is. It's silly to think. If you want to retire, I mean, you would be retiring what? Like people, they say retire at the top of your career, right? You're retiring at the bottom.
Also, if he retires without playing this season, the Bengals would have a 1-year contract on him if he ever came back. So he couldn't just sit out for a year.
So I don't get it. I don't get it all. He signed the contract. His agent made the deal, and now for 2 straight years, he hasn't liked the way that's turned out. So let's say you do, and this goes back to what Jacob said, and he's 100% right. Let's say you give him 4 more years. Well, next year he's just going to pout again when he has another good year. So it's impossible to satisfy this guy. I hope he plays well. I like him. He seems like a very nice human being. It's nothing against him personally, but professionally, this nuisance, it's just annoying at this point.
If I could pick, honestly, at this point, I'm picking a 1 year.
Yeah.
1-year deal, don't hold out and leave. I'm out of the ideal offseason being a long-term extension with Trey Hendrickson. I don't want to deal with this again in a year or two. So 1-year deal, let's get another 18 sacks this year. Let's go for a Super Bowl in San Francisco, and then let's go our separate ways.
Joe Burrow did the media tour, and he was very outspoken about getting deals done for Jamar and T, Mike Gesicki, Trey Hendrickson. Those were the names that were all brought up. Gesicki gets taken care of. Jamar Chase, highest paid non-quarterback in the history of the NFL. T. Higgins gets his extension. The odd man out, as of right now, is Trey Hendrickson. How awkward, how weird of a dynamic is that when everyone walks into the locker room and everyone knows that Trey was a part of those core players that Burrow was pushing in the media tour to get taken care of, and he's the one that has not been taken care of. I'm curious how that dynamic plays out and what kind of role that plays and how this shakes out as we get closer and closer to camp, which we're not even to the draft yet, and it's March, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do think obviously the glaring difference between those guys is where they're at in their careers. I mean, two guys going into or comfortably in their primes, and the guy that's at 30 when, every metric in the entire world tells you that his position starts to fall off a cliff right about now. So maybe he's the outlier, maybe not, but either way, I don't think anybody, characterizes Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins in the same level in terms of where they're at right now in their career. Obviously, all three are crucial to the Bengals' success, and that's why I don't think the Bengals are moving Trey Hendrickson. What you're saying right now, if it's that big of an issue, then trade him for a third-round pick. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, so I think it would if it was too big of an issue. I think Trey Hendrickson knows the boat he's in. He knows that this was going to be an uphill battle with the Bengals front office all offseason just because of where he's at and the history with them. I know Joe Burrow wants him back, and that's obviously great, but we've filled his plate a little bit this offseason. If we can't do everything that he wants, maybe that's all right.
All right, well, what he wanted, he pretty much got. He got T. Higgins, he got Jamar Chase, and the news came out, and it was like, oh, you hear about the story of Jamar Chase basically saying it's both of us or none of us, and they get the deal done. And there was a lot of, great publicity for that. And I don't think this is a horrible thing, but there's a lot of Bengals fans, a lot of, followers of the Bengals that once the details of those contracts were released, all of the sudden, the Bengals just seem to mismanage how they went about getting these deals done. I mean, at first it's, hey, we'll be pissed if you don't get a deal done. Now people have moved their frustration towards how they got the deal done. We're going to pick up with that when we come back. Talking more Bengals next. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins obviously spent a lot of time on the saga that was the build-up to them finally getting their deals done, and then they got their deals done, and then everything went quiet for a bit. Everyone's happy, just waiting on the Trey Hendrickson deal. But then the details of the contracts for T and Jamar came out, and this is, we'll get to the T thing more in depth in a moment, but when you look at the makeup of these contracts for both Jamar and T. Higgins, we hear so much about how teams manipulate the cap throughout the NFL. There's a lot of teams that pay players the amount that the Bengals are paying these two, but they structure them to where they don't really heavily impact you right away, and you kind of backload some of these contracts, and then you roll over some of these deals, and it takes a while before these truly start to impact your ability to be able to make additional moves. But the Bengals seem pretty locked right now with what moves they can make the rest of the offseason, and it's because of the extensions that they just made with two guys that actually the extensions should have given them a little bit more of a break from a financial standpoint. Now that the honeymoon period of, okay, they got the deals done, that's died down. Now people are starting to pay attention to the details of these contracts. And a lot of people are being critical of the Bengals for not getting these done correctly. In fact, they have their two star players. Yes, they're two pass catchers for Joe Burrow for the long-term future, but they did it in a way that is going to hurt how they're able to construct a roster moving forward. I'm not going to pretend to be a cap aficionado in this situation. I know, Casey, you pulled up the numbers right now. I guess I'm going to ask you, why is everyone so concerned about the way that they made up these contracts for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and how exactly is it going to not really hurt, but negatively impact how they put a roster together moving forward?
Basically, the gist of it, the summary of this before I go into deep detail, is that they had roughly about $10 million extra dollars in that ballpark.
Just $10 million.
Yeah, just $10 million to spread out, and they did not. They decided to front load these contracts, do a more Bengals traditional method, and not basically stretch out those roster bonuses, which is what they ended up putting a lot of this money into. Looking into the details for T. Higgins' contract, there's $5 million in a roster bonus this year, and $10 million next year, and $5 million the year after. This one isn't as egregious as the others. This is only roughly about $3 million once you start factoring in the per game bonus that they throw in there too. But roughly they had about $2 to $3 million with T. Higgins' contract this season that they could have prorated out. They could have stretched it out. And keep in mind, roster bonuses, they're upfront money. Signing bonuses, you can prorate out those same deals. You can put them in escrow, and it still hits the account the same way for these athletes. So just keep that in mind, that you could have just thrown some of this money into a signing bonus instead of the roster bonus, and you would have theoretically saved yourself some money by prorating that out over the long term. So roughly, T. Higgins' cap number, it went down a couple million from where it was when you signed the franchise tag. So I mean, they kind of got the deal done there. They did lessen the cap hit with him, but it wasn't to the degree that many of us thought it would be. And then we get to Jamar Chase's contract, which is probably the most egregious out of all of them. His roster bonus for year one of this contract is $10 million, and then it's zeros the rest of the year, the rest of his contract. None of it is escrow. None of it is spread out. So there's roughly about $8 million there that you could have stretched out, put into future years, put it into a signing bonus. There's lots of different ways they could have done this. They could have put, the $2 million in the roster bonuses for those years that you have left on the contract instead of just putting it all up front, which basically added, like I said, another $8 million to this year's cap number, which made him more expensive than what he was in his fifth-year option for his rookie deal. We actually found a way to increase his cap number, where most of us throughout the offseason thought, when you get these deals done with T and Jamar, you're going to lessen those cap hits because you're going to spread out some of those roster bonuses, the signing bonus. You're going to spread that out, prorate that out, put it in escrow, and it all hits the same. But that's not what the Bengals did. And basically, a lot of experts, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, this is a very surface level reading of this. Many of the experts have said that this is indefensible, egregious what the Bengals have done, because the money, it all hits the account the same way for these athletes. It all hits escrow, and they got access to it right then and there. But that's not what the Bengals decided to do. They decided to, go the more Bengals traditional route, front load these contracts, save a couple million the next couple seasons, which you might think, well, that will help with the cap, right? Well, this year's $1 million is not the same as next year's $1 million. The cap has exponentially been rising for years now at this point. So $1 million today is not going to be the same amount of value as it is next season. Now, the 2026 season, the cap space is currently sitting at $86 million, which is a lot. And I think a lot of us have said time and time again that this free agent class was not great. But what the Bengals have done now is made this season's cap number, it's currently sitting at $24 million. They've made it to where it is virtually impossible to make a deal with Trey Hendrickson and go and sign a starting guard or go add depth on the D-line, which basically means they're done. They're basically done with this free agency. This is what this is all they've added. TJ Slayton and Orlin, or whatever his name is, the linebacker. That's
Warren Burks.
Warren Burks. That's all they added. So that's where the problem comes in, is that extra $10 million could have at least given you the wiggle room to, if you wanted to, give Trey exactly what he wanted, if you had to bend over backwards during the season, if he's going to be sitting out, you had that money to play with. You had that money to be able to give him. Or you could have gotten a guard. You could have gotten whoever you wanted earlier especially if you got these contracts done sooner than what they did. But now the Bengals are put in an impossible position. When you factor in the rookie class, when you factor in the practice squad, that 24 becomes roughly somewhere between 10 to 12, which if you add that 10 to 12 to Trey, that's only getting you to about 28 to 30 this season, which is nothing compared to what the other guys have gotten. Hunter Daniil with the $35 million cap hit. Max Crosby, the Myles Garrett, which, I think Trey Hendrickson is probably in that camp where he should be getting something close to Hunter Daniil. I mean, that guy is a year younger and making 35, so Trey should probably be making somewhere around that this season. I don't know about future years, but the point is, the Bengals have really handcuffed themselves. I think that it was pretty egregious of them to structure these contracts the way that they did, because it's basically like, hey, fans, look at the cap number. We can't give Trey more than this number. Well, you could have, but you chose not to structure these contracts in a way that allowed you to get that space. They're not completely screwed by any stretch of the imagination, though. We've talked about them restructuring Joe Burrow's contract. We've talked about restructuring Orlando Brown's contract. That gives them a little more wiggle room to be able to make those moves that they want to, but they've never shown that capability in the past. They've never shown that they are willing to do something like that. So right now, today, you can safely say that they're done with free agency unless they get another $1 million, league minimum deal, which is what they did with Lucas Patrick, by the way, which I don't even know if that number's in this over the cap number, the thing that they have here publicly for us to look at. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot for the Bengals because in today's society, in today's world where we have all the info and that you can see where they purposely structure these contracts in such a way that limits them this year, it's kind of mind-boggling. It's like you're saving yourself $1 million next year and maybe a couple million in 2027. But what good is that if you're going to struggle to find a starting guard this year? That money could have been better spent. And it is what it is now. I mean, the contract's done, they're signed, and that's the positive spin of this is that you got that trio of guys for the next 4 years, but at what cost? I think lots of us thought that they were going to be a little more proactive, be able to get these done before free agency, so then you know what you have going into it. I think a lot of us thought that they would be a little more modern when these contracts come out. Turns out they really weren't all that modern except for Jamar Chase's contract, and even then it had a spin of the Bengals juju on it that makes it hard to compete. So here we are today sitting with a star that once paid and will likely sit out a couple games, and I agree with you guys. He'll probably sit out at least week 1. I don't know how long he'll sit out, but they don't have to do this is the thing. Like, they don't have to go down this road, but they're playing hardball and they're going down a path that is a lot of resistance.
Yeah, I know a lot of Bengals fans are freaking out about it. I know Casey texted us originally after it happened and the structures all broke, and he was like, this is completely indefensible. How could the Bengals do anything like this? Everything along those lines. I don't care. It's $8 million for 2 guys that I'm going to get to watch for the next 4 years and have a lot of fun. If we miss the playoffs a couple times because we don't have a guard, that's fine by me. I get to watch Jamar and T. And the alternative is we don't have a guard and we don't get to watch Jamar and T. Because to act like the Bengals aren't going to sign Jamar and T and then go out and improve this roster, that's what I've been saying the whole time. So give me the fun. Give me the old, roster construction. It stinks, but we're fans of a terrible franchise. So let's have fun watching them.
And here's the thing, too. I know I've rambled quite a lot there, but I snuck it in there earlier. They have $86 million next season.
They do.
Like they have a lot of money next year.
That's the fun thing about how the Bengals do contracts. You can always just look like 2 years in the future before they mess that up and be like, wow, they have a lot of cap space there. Because they will screw this up next year, and they're going to go into it with just extend, B.J. Hill to a 3-year deal for fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly. Like, we can't predict what they'll do next year, but very much like this offseason, you look at the free agents next year, and it's like, well, it's Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, and that's it. That's all the guys that are really worth maybe extending, and those guys,
God,
maybe you don't.
Stinks, man.
So, like, they have a lot of money next year, so you can give kudos to them for not, even though they've got these deals done, they're not completely sacrificing everything in their future to get it done.
Right.
There needs to be a little more give. That's all I think that we were expecting, is for them to give a little more to this year, to really go in on this year. But maybe they just looked at the free agent class, and said, there's not a lot of guys we want to pay. And I totally understand that perspective too.
We got another big free agent we got to deal with next offseason, Trey Hendrickson. So
Forever.
Never ends.
Forever.
That one legitimately, I'm kind of, this is a bit show, so I am for the Trey Hendrickson bit of just signing 2-year extensions and holding out in the middle.
Oh, I love
just
it.
into eternity.
I love
That'd
it.
be pretty fun.
I can't believe we traded T. Higgins for Trey Hendrickson for the next year. I mean, that's fantastic.
No, Jake, earlier when you said that, obviously you don't care because you have T and Jamar, and you would love to have those guards and all that, but it didn't have to be T and Jamar or guard and other free agents. You could add your cake and eat it too. You could add both of them.
I don't think so.
Like,
the Bengals just aren't smart. They
that's the point.
They weren't going to do this right. Maybe by the time we roll around to the next time we have to extend some guys, they'll have more than 4 scouts, and someone in the front office doesn't have the same blood type as them. So that'd be really cool. And then maybe we can talk about structures and being a modern contender. But the fact that we're sitting here a week later, and I have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on the Bengals for the next 4 years, it's going to take a lot more than $10 million to get me upset. It's going to take a lot more than that.
To be fair, too, your $10 million it's not paying for the top guards in this class either. Like,
that is true.
Like, they were all in that $16-17 million range.
That is true.
Real quick too, because we did not talk about it, or maybe you did, and I wasn't.
Obviously, I do care if the Bengals miss the playoffs twice in the next 4 years. By the way, let's get that.
Yeah,
No,
that was
very
clear.
clear.
I disagree with that one.
When you said,
I'd rather miss the playoffs with T and Jamar than miss the playoffs without T and Jamar.
Yeah, I'd rather have some fun.
Yeah. At least we'll go 9-8 and lose 45-40 every game. Oh wait, we just did that.
Jacob's the Bengals fan that doesn't care if you miss the playoffs as long as you have Jamar Chase and T. Don't care if you start out 0-6. And then when you start out slow, pissed off,
You'll just win
out slow, you're going to miss the playoffs with T and Jamar one year, and you'll be pissed off that you missed the playoffs with T and Jamar one year. But it's March.
That's right. That's right.
It's March. It is what it is. All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Last thing on this too, T. Higgins. A lot of people made a big deal about just how goofy the contract was. It looked like the Bengals gave him the world and gave Jamar the world. Well, Jamar got the world. T, not so much. I mean, T got the deal. T got an extension. T's going to be in Cincinnati. He really wanted to be in Cincinnati, and I think that contract proved it. I mean, it looks big up front, but when you look at the details of the contract, the Bengals have so much leverage with the remainder of his contract moving forward. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we think we're done with the T drama in Cincinnati. I don't know if we are. That contract, the way it's put together, opens the door for the Bengals to do something goofy with him each and every offseason moving forward.
Oh yeah, there's a 0% chance that he plays 4 years on a 4-year deal. That's a 3-year deal and a big time salary dump in year 4. Sorry about it, T.
But hey, can't look at Joe Burrow and say we didn't get it done. You didn't say how to get it done. You just said to get it done. So, you say jump, you say how high.
I think there's been a lot of conversations with Joe Burrow in the front office since those contracts got done. I think a lot of them revolve around you better be getting a ring in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we spent a lot of money for nothing. We're going to be very upset. I almost guarantee you that's the front office's mindset.
Oh, yeah.
All right, good stuff. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. A couple more likely scenarios coming up, NFL draft and some other topics ahead, and then we'll have college football and basketball conversation to close it out. We'll be right back. More Off the Bench next. All right, a couple, a couple more likely scenarios I'll throw out to you guys. Again, we welcome you back off the bench. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here on a Tuesday. A couple days away from opening day. We've talked a lot of Reds today. We talked some Cincinnati Bengals, and now we'll talk a little NFL overall, college basketball, football, and more. So let's start here with the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. Let's start here with Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers here for this first more likely scenario. Elliot, we'll start with you. What's more likely in this scenario here? Aaron Rodgers just ultimately announces he's going to retire, or he's a Pittsburgh Steeler? Which scenario is more likely as we sit here in March?
I don't think he has any interest in retirement, unfortunately. I think he's going to be playing next year. I don't know if it's for the Steelers, but I do believe Aaron Rodgers will be a quarterback in the NFL last year. I think he was good enough last season to at least be competitive this season for somebody. If it's the Steelers, it's the Steelers. But I don't think retirement is nearing for Rodgers yet. Maybe if nobody bites this year for him, maybe then it'll come into play. But he's Aaron Rodgers. He's a borderline generational superstar that, changed the organization of the Green Bay Packers. So I think he's going to be playing football next year. I think he's probably be playing the year after that. I don't think he has any interest in retirement. I don't think he has many friends to share retirement with, if I'm going to be completely honest. So
drugs and forests.
In the forest. If he goes back into
Darkness.
the forest, then maybe. But yeah, I would be pretty utterly shocked if he announced his retirement tomorrow. So way more likely he plays for the Steelers.
I think retirement's more likely than the Steelers just because everyone already has him penciled into the Steelers. When's the last time Aaron Rodgers did what everyone's saying he should do?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any chance he goes to the Steelers anymore now that everyone has said it's an open and shut case. So I think Rodgers probably sits around and waits for another offer. In our chat, someone threw out Las Vegas as a potential option with the Raiders for Rodgers. I certainly hope he plays next year. I love watching him. I hope he doesn't end up in Pittsburgh so I can keep rooting for him. But I think he certainly has a lot left in the tank. He was top 10 in basically every statistical category last year. Certainly has the ability to play quarterback in the NFL. I just think he wants to remain at the top of the headlines as long as possible. And as soon as he signs somewhere, that is no longer the case. So I don't think he's signing anywhere anytime soon. I think the retirement talk will get a lot louder than it is right now before he signs anywhere else. I would fully expect him to sign, but anytime a team takes such a significant lead like the Steelers have right now, they fall to the back of my guesses because he'll never do what everyone thinks he should, whether he should or not. I think Pittsburgh's definitely the best opportunity for him.
Casey, what about you? How do you see this unfolding? What's more likely, Aaron Rodgers announcing he's going to retire or announcing he's going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 25?
I think he's going to retire. I don't know. He's been doing this song and dance. I think that he's going to do another darkness retreat here soon, and he's going to see that his future is just not very bright in the AFC North. So,
Jesus.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. He's going to retire.
Yeah, a lot of people. Look, Aaron Rodgers is a polarizing character, so I get why people are down on him. But really, all it comes down to is, can you play quarterback? And Jacob mentioned a little bit ago. The guy threw for 28 touchdowns this past year. He was top 10 in every major quarterback statistical category out there. The guy was not bad as people are trying to paint him out to be. And if you get him to a stable situation in Pittsburgh, I don't think it's a hot take. That's more stable than the Jets. I'm not pulling for this to happen, but that's a very stable situation over there if he ends up in Pittsburgh. The reason this gets brought up too, he was just in Pittsburgh a few days ago, and I was waiting any minute to see that he had, signed before he left. He ended up leaving without a deal being done. I think it's between them and the Vikings. Obviously, I think the Vikings trying to figure out what they want to do, give the keys to J.J. McCarthy, and continue building around a rookie contract quarterback and being able to keep so many weapons in place. They loaded up that roster even more this offseason, by the way. Or they bring in the veteran quarterback who, like Jake said, top 10 in every statistical category out there, and you're giving him a plethora of weapons. You're giving him a defense. I think the Vikings are the better deal. I think that's the best fit for Aaron Rodgers. Whether he's the best fit for them or not, I don't know. But, yeah, I see him playing next season. I don't see him retiring at all. I see him playing at least one more year. Obviously, the Vikings and the Steelers, unless some random team out of nowhere pops up, it'll be interesting to see if that's the case. So, who knows?
I wonder how one-sided that Vikings interest is. How much of that Vikings interest is just Rodgers really wants to play there?
I think that's just Rodgers.
I think it's probably about 80%. Because every time Stefanski stepped to the mic, or not Stefanski, it's Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. Every time Kevin O'Connell has stepped to the mic to talk about the next year or in the future in Minnesota, it's been raving about J.J. McCarthy. Every time he was asked about Sam Darnold before he left for Seattle, it was raving about J.J. McCarthy. I don't think they're going to go sign Aaron Rodgers. They had a meeting with Ryan Tannehill yesterday or earlier this week. I do think that's more close to the route that they're going to go as a veteran backup. Rodgers isn't going to sign anywhere to be a backup. I think that is a no-brainer in terms of just the way he's operated. I think he's going to start somewhere next year. I still think the Giants are in the mix. Even though they signed Jameis Winston, I do think a one-year deal with Aaron Rodgers in New York could still potentially be in the mix, though it doesn't seem like he has as much interest as they had there. Do you think the Browns still pick up the phone on that one?
No, I mean, they're being linked to, if they go that veteran quarterback route, it could be Russell Wilson. That's one of the dominoes that could fall. The problem is, I don't see how Cleveland, and I know they keep freeing up a ton of money. Like they're still in on Brandon Ayuk. They keep freeing up dollars. But there's a lot of reports 25 to 30 mil is what Russell Wilson's looking for. And I guarantee you Aaron Rodgers isn't saying, hey, I'll play for a bag of popcorn. He's going to need paid about that same amount of money as well. I don't know how Cleveland could afford any of these veteran quarterbacks, which is why I wasn't surprised that they got Kenny Pickett. I anticipate possibly a quarterback in the draft, but they keep being linked to these veteran quarterbacks that they're going to have to spend a nice chunk of change on. So who knows? But Aaron Rodgers has not been linked to Cleveland in any heavy, capacity, which I'm a little surprised by, but also it's Cleveland, so I'm not surprised by it at the same time. But if he runs out of options, you're going to go play for Cleveland or Pittsburgh? I know Cleveland has more playoff wins than Pittsburgh in the last 15-plus years, but at the end of the day, it's still probably going to be Pittsburgh if you're Aaron Rodgers and have to choose. However, he's an ego guy, man. Like, I tell you what, you go win in Pittsburgh, well, you're going to be overshadowed by the fact that it's Pittsburgh. You go lead Cleveland to 9-10 wins, to the playoffs, get a playoff win, oh, you're going to be Mr. Big Shot. I think it's a much bigger deal if you lead Cleveland to any kind of success whatsoever. Or you could go to Pittsburgh, finish above 500. Well, guess what? Mason Rudolph, he had a 500 record in Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett had a 500 record in Pittsburgh. All these quarterbacks have 500 records in Pittsburgh. You could win in Pittsburgh. Everyone wins in Pittsburgh. Cleveland, if you're an ego guy, Aaron Rodgers, well, I think that's where you want to go if you want a chance to prove that you're still the guy. But,
well, what's bigger for his ego and what's more memorable, going to Cleveland and winning or going to Pittsburgh and being so bad you get Mike Tomlin fired?
Ooh.
I think both are pretty close to as unlikely. So he just left the Jets. He gutted their entire franchise. What happens when he goes to Pittsburgh and it doesn't work out? Does Mike Tomlin bite the bullet for Aaron Rodgers? That would be crazy.
I don't see him in a Cleveland Browns uniform. That would be pretty shocking to me. I think that it's hard for me to see him in a Steelers uniform as well, but it's a little less hard to see him in those stupid Bumblebee uniforms.
Moving on, more likely here, while we're on Cleveland here at the moment, but what's more likely, the Browns taking a quarterback at number 2 or drafting Abdul Carter with their number 2 pick? Which scenario of those is more likely in your guys' opinion?
You're not having a special season ticket holders concert with a massive event in your stadium and inviting everyone that's ever been to a Browns game to come to a big old party if you're not going to take a quarterback. They're not doing all that for Abdul Carter. I think they're taking Shedeur Sanders too.
I think it's a quarterback. For the reasons you kind of just said, they haven't made a ton of progress with a quarterback that's, somewhat, no disrespect, of course, to Kenny Pickett. That's somewhat
disrespect.
Yeah, I'll
you guys
disrespect
are disrespecting him.
I'll disrespect
Oh,
him.
yeah.
All right. Well,
You've
then
seen
we'll
those
disrespect.
hands?
Then we'll disrespect him.
He got thrown by a football.
I'm going to
this year.
disrespect him. I'm going to disrespect him. He's a terrible quarterback.
He plays
so
quarterback.
if
The
the
football
Browns
threw him.
if the Browns are looking for a quarterback that is somewhat competent, and they're not going to do it via free agency, which I've seen, at least at this point, pretty hard to see them going out and getting a free agent quarterback, then it's going to be through the draft. I think the Browns do draft Shedeur, like Kinner wanted to. Kinner wanted them to do that.
I've never, I've always been a Shedeur guy. I've had his Browns jersey bought since, the beginning of the, off season. So there you go. Man, I tell you, I still like the Abdul Carter route. I still would prefer they go the Abdul Carter route. And you could say, well, they need a quarterback. But even if they get a quarterback, this roster still has some deficiencies with it. Having a dynamic pass, 2 pass rushers like that would just be huge. But, Jake, I agree. They're not doing all those season ticket holder events and everything and doing what they're doing just to announce Abdul Carter coming in, and that's a big addition if they get him, no doubt. But yeah, I think it's going to be Cam or Shador, whoever's sitting there at 2. If both are available, I think they take Cam over Shador. But there's something about Shador that he's flashier than Cam. I don't think he's as talented as Cam, but I think Cleveland's enamored by Shador at this point, and I could see them going him at 2. I prefer Abdul Carter, but I see them going Shador at 2 when it's all said and done.
I very, very, very much am on my knees every night before I go to bed praying that you take Shador Sanders over Abdul Carter. I will genuinely lose sleep about having to play Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter twice a year on that defensive line. Please take one of these quarterbacks. I can't deal with that. I mean, that would be an absolute nightmare. I think Abdul Carter's a generational player, and I think he'll end up somewhere certainly still in this top 5 after the tumble off the top 2 picks. I don't think Cam Ward's going anywhere but Tennessee after yesterday. Yesterday was Miami's pro day. He put on an absolute show in terms of some of the throws he was making. Xavier Restrepo looked great too, but Cam Ward was there in front of the Titans coach, GM, owner, social media team, and private video crew. So they were filming his pro day for their social media. Yeah. I would assume soon after for a compilation after they draft him. I don't know, but I don't think I've ever seen a contingent that large going to a pro day when you're still trying to, act like you're not going to take a quarterback at 1. So I think Cam Ward to the Titans is as much of a done deal as you can get with still about a month to go until the draft. So that would, if we're going quarterback, that would leave Shador.
Gosh, and you want to know what's funny, Elliot? I read this the other day. Deshaun's back. He's back in Cleveland. He was working out and rehabbing in Cleveland the other day. Him and his team. I mean, you want to talk about a guy with no self-awareness? I mean, I was amazed. He brought like his video crew guys with him, and he was in the gym doing the ropes and all this stuff. I mean, he's what? Like, I don't like. So they put that out, and then Cleveland shared it. So their social media team shared it as well. And then it's like, so if they do go Abdul Carter and you sign Kenny Pickett, it's like. And I don't know, man. Like, I still feel like they're going to just screw around and buy time just to bring Deshaun back. And if that's the case, I will never defend it again. I'll just let you guys continue to punch on my team, and I'll sit there with a smile on my face because I don't know. It is what it is. But I pray to do a show with Elliot one day where Deshaun is the quarterback for the Browns again. I pray that we could have that moment and share those shows once again.
Listen, you were the one who defended him. All I did was say that the guy couldn't play the quarterback position anymore. And every single year I'm right when he plays 6 games, gets hurt, and has the entire city boo him as he gets carted off the field.
I didn't defend him. I said you said that they played poorly.
You defended his play on the field.
I never defended his play. What I defended was the fact that you said that they were bad because they didn't want to play.
Correct, and I was right, and I was objectively right on that.
But they wanted to play for him for the first 2 years when he had a winning record. That's the point I was trying to make. Is you were saying he's such a scumbag human that they didn't want to play for him. He is a scumbag human, but they had no problem winning games with him to start the first 2 years. They lost games the last year, and then that's when they decided he was a scummy human being.
Winning cures all.
I just want you to admit that Jameis Winston was objectively the guy that locker room was cheering for.
He was 3-5.
Would have been 4-5 if he would have came in right after Deshaun got hurt against the Bengals.
And there you go. It would have been increased his win percentage in Cleveland.
DTR worst quarterback to ever play football in the NFL by a distant
wide margin.
Yeah, he stinks. He stinks real loud.
So here's the deal. If the Browns take Shador and Shador turns out to be the franchise quarterback for Cleveland and he works out, DTR would have done more for Cleveland than any quarterback outside of Baker Mayfield since returning. That includes Joe Flacco. DTR would have done more to help the Cleveland Browns because if Shador is the guy, that was your get out of the Deshaun Watson hell free category. That's the only way you get out of this Deshaun hell is if Shador or Cam or whoever you take it to, if assuming it's quarterback, the only way you get out of that is if one of these two guys hits. Because then while everyone's watching how well they're playing, yes, you're going to focus on the bad quarterback sitting off on the side, but it's easier to forget that if this quarterback leads them to some wins. But if and when it blows up, and it will, now we'll talk about how bad they are at drafting and developing Shador and how bad the contract was for Deshaun, and we'll just relive this hell, or I will, all over again. So there's that. All right. I know you do. I know you do. I mean, every time something bad with the Browns happens, I smile because I'm like, I could just feel, Elliot smirk.
But nothing's bad. Nothing bad's happened yet, so we have time.
That is true. All right, we'll step away for a few moments, a couple more likely scenarios to close out the show, and we'll talk about the NIL and transfer portal, which one is hurt college athletics more. We'll discuss that and more when we come back. All right, and we are back off the bench. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ruring, and Jacob Tissett with you here. We'll get back into these more likely scenarios, but apparently, Elliot, there's a leak in the studio. Is that what you said? There's a leak?
I think there's a leak in here. We got to get a plumber and fix it because we've got leaks. For those of you who are interested in the Reds' opening day lineup, this is our good friend Caleb513. Caleb has tweeted this out from his sources, and it looks like a pretty accurate lineup of it's going to look like an opening day.
What are the chances his sources are his eyes?
Could be that. Could be a picture. It's a completely blurred out picture, so if I'm wrong, you can go to his Twitter account and yell at him about it, not me. But I am going to read it, and I'm going to take it word for word here. Batting leadoff, TJ Friedl. Batting second, Matt McLean. Hitting in the 3-hole, Elly De La Cruz. Austin Hays hitting fourth. Gavin Lux hitting fifth. Candelario hitting sixth. CES 7. Jake Fraley 8. And our catcher, Jose Trevino, hitting 9. That is your alleged opening day lineup on Thursday.
That's not like, let's assume Christian Encarnacion Strand takes that next step. I don't think that lineup is god-awful. I don't think it's the best in baseball, not even close. I just don't think it's that bad. Like, if Christian Encarnacion Strand hits up to expectations and he's hitting in the bottom third of the order, that's a good thing for the Cincinnati Reds. You know what I mean? Like, everyone has to produce to the back of their baseball card or expectations. I completely get that. But that lineup, and that's a lineup, and I don't think it sounds horrible. It doesn't have Spencer Steer or Tyler Stephenson in it for the time being. Like, it's still a lot of question marks, but TJ Friedl, we know when he's been healthy how good of a hitter he is. I know we're not talking about defense and stuff like that right now, but just from a lineup perspective, because that's what it's going to come down to. When you have a rotation, I mean, the first 3 starts of the season, the top 3 guys in the rotation for the Reds, obviously Hunter Greene, Nick Lodolo, who looked very good his last couple outings in spring, by the way, and Nick Martinez. You're going to have the horses on the mound to set the tone for the first 3 games of the season. I don't mind that lineup. It's not something I'm going to sleep, smiling about every night, but I think we could be in a much worse spot than what the vibes are right now heading into Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it now, I'm a little less offended as I was last night. I had people in my mentions saying, "Oh no, don't overpay for Anthony Santander. Why would you overpay for that guy?" And it's just like, if the Reds tried, they could be really, really good if they spent money. I wish they would have spent more money on the outfield. They obviously didn't spend any. Austin Hays, and people are taking me as disrespecting Austin. Austin Hays, great value. I think that's a great signing for a team like the Cincinnati Reds. I don't know if he's going to be hitting cleanup the whole year, hitting wherever he hits this season, but I like him, and I think he's a value guy, and I hope that the Reds outfield outperforms my expectations by 1,000,000 points. I think this season really will come down to, and Jacob and I have said it for about 2 weeks now. If Candelario and CES are good this year, you're looking at a playoff team. I do believe that, because as of right now, you have Elly and Matt McClain who you're confident in. You're okay with TJ Friedel. I would say you're okay with Gavin Lux and Austin Hays, and then outside of that, you're not really okay with anybody else. You're just hoping Candelario and CES are going to be good. CES has had a good spring. I hope he shows out. At least this season. Obviously, he had an okay start last year and then got injured and went down the tank. But a healthy CES, I'm very interested to see what he can do this season.
Yeah, I think that's the hope, is you need the guys that we have faith in to live up to every single bit of that, and then you need the guys that we don't have faith in to outperform the expectations.
Yeah.
So, great place to be.
Yeah, Austin Hays, again, finishing spring, hitting .310, 3 home runs, 14 RBIs. Look, when guys, it's whatever stock you want to put into spring training numbers, but I don't expect that number. I don't expect .310 on the season. But again, he hit 270 or whatever it was, 280 a couple years ago in his All-Star season, before last year when he was hurt. So Austin Hays hitting in the cleanup spot. I would like it to be Tyler Stephenson or someone that's healthy. Obviously, those guys aren't there. But overall, as far as being able to produce runs in the top half of that order, I don't mind it. This was a small ball caliber team last year. They have to be a small ball caliber team with the athletes they have in this lineup. Obviously, you want them to minimize the base running mistakes that they were so common last year. But they're going to produce runs. I just don't think we're going to be enamored with power. Unless that bat comes alive, unless he becomes that 30 home run guy that we were expecting last year when they signed him. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Let me ask you this. We lose Spencer Steer. That could be a season ending. We don't know yet. It's indefinite. Who do you think, obviously Spencer Steer, the leader in the clubhouse and runs batted in, who do you think is going to be the RBI leader this year for the Cincinnati Reds? If Elly De La Cruz hits third all year, I imagine he goes to leadoff at some point.
It didn't sound like it when
really?
when they asked
You don't think
Terry.
so?
Tom asked Terry Francona when he was on the show, and he said Elly will bat third.
Interesting. If Elly hits third, I think Elly would have to be the odds-on favorite to lead the clubhouse in RBIs.
I will bet on who bets after Elly because
Well,
of how he moves.
it looks like that's going to be a platoon type of situation.
I don't think so because
it's
I think if
Austin-
Candelario and CES live up to where we're at, one of those guys is batting cleanup.
You think so?
They have to, right?
Austin Hays, as of right now, again, it's early, but I would venture to say Jamier Candelario, if he's healthy, is going to be our RBI guy this year.
That would
That's
also
my
be one of my guesses. Yeah, I think one that I really like, and obviously it is dependent on how much he plays. If we're going the Nick Kirby mindset that he's going to play, 120 games, I think a guy that can sneak into that conversation is Gavin Lux.
Yeah.
I think the way he gets the bat on the ball and where he's going to be, moved around and potentially in the lineup a lot more than most of those other guys in those platoons, I think he's an exciting player, and maybe he can be, a guy that really steps up and throws his name into that mix.
It's interesting, we talked about Gavin Lux and, how the fact that, injuries will happen and it'll free up spots and it'll all take care of itself. This is a team we had in 4 guys on the IL. 2 everyday players are going to be, starting it out on the IL and Steer and Stephenson. So the 2 guys starting out on the IL, it didn't free up anything for any kind of flexibility with these infielders. I'm not saying I wish it was someone else that was hurt. I'm just saying we're still trying to figure out if he does play that 120-plus games, how is he going to be utilized to be able to get consistent enough at bats to open that up. Either way, we'll worry about that when, the season kind of gets underway and you get a couple series under your belt and see how Francona is going to go about, putting his lineups together and utilizing some of these guys. But this transitions perfectly into our next more likely scenario. I sent it to you guys earlier, but when you look at, Jamier Candelario and Christian Encarnacion Strand, CES was beat up last year, but even before he was beat up last year and hurt, he was not playing up to expectations. I know he went on a little hot streak for a bit, and it looked like he was kind of coming out of his slump a bit, but he was just very inconsistent. Second-year guy. It's understandable. Candelario, big signing last year, expected more out of him. Didn't work out the way we anticipated last year. Which of these 2 is more likely to have a bounce-back season in 25? Jamier Candelario or Christian Encarnacion Strand?
I think just because I don't think Jamier was completely terrible last year. So for that reason alone, I'm going to say CES because CES was terrible, and that was because of an injury. So I think that if he's able to be healthy, he's going to be significantly better than he was last season. You're going to see a different CES. You're going to see maybe what we saw a couple years ago out of him. So I think he's going to be the most improved player this year. I'm hoping I'm completely wrong about him. I'm hoping he's going to be that power bat because we desperately need him to be. I'm going to say CES, but I do think both of those guys are in line for very crucial seasons if this team has any business making the postseason. Because outside of those two guys, I mean, you need Matt McClain and Elly De La Cruz, right? And obviously those are our guys at the front of the lineup. I don't know in the back end of the lineup if we have anything as of right now. Gavin Lux, I think he could be a guy. I think Austin Hays could be a guy. But these are all questions. I think CES and Jamir, we brought them in, or at least we have them playing this year, and we're factoring them in as being key contributors.
The bar is so low for CES to improve. So if you're talking about year-over-year improvement, it's going to be CES because he's not going to be the worst hitter in the MLB this year.
Yeah.
He's just not. Even if he doesn't live up to expectations, it's going to be a drastic improvement from what we saw last year when he was playing through injury. I'm going to go Jeimer Candelario just because I think even what we did see last year when he was banged up and he did miss time, he really did have a decent enough year. I mean, the OBP was tough to watch. The slash line was absolutely brutal, but he got out there and he hit 20 home runs, which is what we signed him to do. And I think when we talk about this team and this roster and we don't have that power bat, I think we might. I think we might have that power bat, and that bat is Jeimer Candelario. Certainly, that's what we paid him $15 million a year to come here and do. So if he can do that this year and be that player we sign and stay healthy and stay on the field, I think we'll be talking about him in the top 3 to 5 names when we're talking about this Reds team getting on the doorstep of the playoffs or having a really interesting and fun September fighting for that spot. I think it's going to be because of Jeimer Candelario. I think CES obviously a massive step from what we saw last year, but unless Candelario can be what we thought he was going to be when we signed him, this Reds team really doesn't have a fighting chance. So I'm going to go ahead and put my eggs in that basket.
All right, and by the way, not a bad show as far as the positivity of the Reds are concerned. I think that's our last Reds tidbit of the show today. So not bad, Elliot. Much better job today on the positivity front. I felt it. I felt the positivity just coming through the mic, coming through the screen. I mean, you did a fantastic job with the positivity today. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your Bearcats, and let's talk about Xavier.
Thank God.
Yes, I mean how many days away till the crown? I know that we need to get a countdown on the show. We need to get. Do we have a countdown ticker feature on any of the elements that we have? We should get one built.
8 more weeks.
8 weeks. Yeah, 2 months.
Yeah. Middle of June.
I have a picture here. I'm not going to show it because I don't know if he wants it shown. But our guy, Big Ed from the chat, he has 3D printed a UC crown. It looks spectacular. It looks spectacular. He said it took 17 hours to make. 17 hours to make this beautiful crown. I'm going to try to buy it.
Nice.
I'm going to see how much I can buy that for because it looks absolutely incredible.
It's amazing how far this program has fallen since the fan base was mad at me for calling them a joke earlier this year. Now they're 3D printing crowns.
Also,
and their coach might be going to Wake Forest.
That would be special. That would be a special moment if Wes went to Wake Forest.
You know what you would be
talking about a lateral move, huh? Head on over to Wake Forest Town. Demon Deacons, baby.
When the football program got Satterfield and Louisville cheered, you guys would be Louisville in that situation.
We would.
That is true.
You would help him move. You would be right there outside his house, ready to help load up the U-Haul and get him out of there. But hey, with Xavier looking for a coach right now, Chris Mack's being linked, towards that. So a more likely scenario here for you guys when it comes to Xavier at this point. What's more likely, Xavier hiring a former Xavier head coach to be their next head coach, or a completely new head coach moving forward? What's more likely? Xavier going to go with somebody new that's never coached there before, or bringing back a familiar face, a Thad Matta, maybe a Chris Mack? How do you think Xavier is going to go about with this coaching decision?
I mean, it's got to be going back to the well, right?
Familiar face is like minus 800.
That's what they do.
It's minus 800. I don't even know who the best option would be if you didn't. I mean, Mick Cronin. I don't think that's going to be a good fit.
Xavier fans think they're getting Pat Kelsey to leave Louisville.
I don't think that's happening.
No, of course.
I think Chris Mack's the best option. He had a lot of success at Xavier, so I don't know why you wouldn't want to run it back. Honestly, I know he didn't do a lot of the recruiting, so maybe during this new age NIL, you wouldn't want him to lead that. But I also think in the new age NIL, you can bring in a general manager as well. I mean, if you brought in a general manager, you bring in Chris Mack. I think there's success there. He's a good basketball coach, so I wouldn't be surprised if they went that route. I don't think they're going to go Bill Murray's son. I think Chris Mack's just by far and away the best option that Xavier can get.
Yeah,
And I don't think it's
no
a bad
question
hire.
about it.
I don't think it'd be a bad hire. I really don't. I think considering the circumstances, Sean came back, won 3 tournament games, led them to the Sweet 16. They won and got a first 4 win over in just last week, whatever, in Dayton. To lose Sean after the momentum built over the last couple of years, and if you end up with Chris Mack, I think that's a good thing as far as that goes. So we'll see.
Where will Chris Mack go in 3 years?
I mean, moving on up, springboard.
To UC.
That'd be cool.
I think he hates UC.
With that
By the way,
what's that?
also real quick, touching on the Bearcats, Jizzle James rumored to enter the portal. Obviously we know. Put him down.
My single rooting interest
You
this
put those
offseason.
down.
That is the only thing I want. I want Jizzle James to be Sean Miller's point guard at Texas. It's my only rooting interest this offseason.
You put those fingers down. Jizzle James rumored to enter the portal. That's not a massive surprise, I'd say. There's going to be a completely different roster pretty much next year for the Bearcats. It's just an utter and complete failure that we're going to lose Jizzle James because of ineptitude and a bad coach. So that's pretty frustrating to me. Again, I hope things turn around for the Bearcats next year. There's just a lot of things that need to go right, and I don't know if Wes is the guy to do it. Right now, he's here because it costs $10 million to get rid of him. It's about as bad of a place as you could be. There's going to be Xavier's losing a bunch of guys too, so you're going to look at 2 new, completely different rosters next year. But hey, maybe Wes gets a win at Cintas. Maybe. I doubt it.
Wouldn't that be something?
I doubt it.
So, with that being said, more likely, Cincinnati, Xavier, which program is more likely to be dancing in March next year and not waiting and leaving their fans waiting for weeks until the crown tips off? Which program is more likely to be dancing in March in the NCAA tournament, Xavier or Cincinnati?
I think UC's going to have so much fun in the crown this year that they're not even going to try to make the tournament. They'll just be locked into the crown from first game tip. So I'll go Xavier.
The first team to ever deny the tournament.
Deny the tournament to go to the crown?
I mean, Xavier's been a better program over the last 15, 20 years, so it would be crazy to say Chris Mack's not going to have any success. I think he has success pretty much from the jump. It'll be a new roster, but I mean, I do think I trust Xavier more than I trust Wes Miller at this point. So
yeah, it's one of those two, like with Wes Miller. And, I get so tired, in today's college athletics landscape, when people say, well, you need a few years to get your guys in there, it doesn't work that way. I mean, you look at, there's 4 coaches in the Sweet 16 right now that they're with their program for the first year. It's John Calipari at Arkansas, Dusty May over at Michigan, Mark Pope at Kentucky, and then Kevin Young over with his program too. So you look at those, it's like, we're seeing coaches come in, take over programs, and have instant success. There's no, Calipari needs to go to Arkansas, but he's going to need a few years to get some of his guys over there. No, it's like you come in and you instantly turn it around. And Wes Miller has won some games. There's been some stretches, but it hasn't been consistent enough for you to completely feel confident that they can get to the NCAA tournament, especially if they lose a lot of talent from a roster that we deem to be talented enough for them to be preseason top 25, to be a legit contender out of the Big 12, and to be a legit contender to get in that large bid, something they couldn't accomplish in any of those feats. So it's one of those, I'm going to have more faith in Xavier to make the tournament next year, and we don't even know who the hell their head coach is going to be, assuming it's Chris Mack, but, we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, not a lot of returning players, not a coach, and I still would take them just because they've been run better. I mean, despite with the UC narrative being that it takes 5 years to have success at a Division I college basketball level, it's just not true. West Virginia's guy, I know he left, DeVries, he had success immediately. They got screwed out of a tournament, or maybe he told the tournament committee not to put him in so he could accept a new job. But I think there's a ton of coaches out there that have had success in their first year. It shouldn't take 5 years. Wes Miller, it's going to take 5 years, and that's even if they make the tournament next year, which I would put at a hard under, whatever those odds would be. So, it's completely disappointing. It's frustrating. It's an utter failure. It doesn't have to take 5 years to rebuild a program. If you have a good head coach, they get you in. That's just what it is. I know he came in during a tough situation. I understand that. Year 3 should have been in. Year 4 should have been in. Year 5 has to be in, or else this isn't a conversation anymore.
Fair enough. Well, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. We'll do this again tomorrow. So until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by UDF, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. All right, and we're back. Just no radio. We're just on YouTube. I can cuss now. I'm not. Let me show some discipline, but it is what it is. So here in Dayton over the weekend, we watched Dayton lost in the NIT at Chattanooga, and right away, everyone, I see a lot of people on there like, oh man, they were so, they came back, they made a run and all this, and I'm like, but you lost at Chattanooga, and that's the thing about the NIT for Dayton that sucks is. They believe that they are bigger than the NIT. So when they're in the NIT, if you win, it's uncomfortable, and if you lose, it's embarrassing. It's a lose-lose. Like I don't know if you're Dayton, you can't brag and pump your chest because you just won the NIT or won an NIT game. But then it's even more embarrassing when you lose the NIT. It's like if you get to these secondary third level tier tournaments. If you're going to be in them, you better win them. But even when you win them, it's kind of uncomfortable. And when you lose, it's embarrassing. So I do have to ask, Elliot, at this point, we keep making jokes about the crown, but like, what's more embarrassing, getting eliminated from the crown or winning the crown? Which one is more embarrassing from where you sit as a Bearcat fan? I know you don't even want them in this damn thing, but they're in it. Which is the worst case scenario? Which would be more embarrassing, losing the crown or winning the entire thing?
So I'll answer it this way. There are different expectations going into a season for different types of programs. If you're a Dayton and you play in the NIT, I still think you can have, fun during that run. It's hard to see Dayton, George Washington, or Lipscomb, all those types of programs. Sorry, no disrespect, Dayton fans, to compare your program to Lipscomb. But I do think, like, if you're talking about expectations coming into the year, when you look at a power conference team, that team has more expectations than a team from the MAC or the team from the SWAC or teams like that. You know what I mean? So, like, last year UC played in the NIT, and it felt like that was fun to me. Like, I know it wasn't the tournament. I know I can mock it. I still wanted the Bearcats to win that event. This one just seems like a joke. This one seems almost like an insult to everybody. Now, I will say the group of guys will get paid if they were to win this one. That's the difference. It's a $300,000 NIL collective if they were to win. It's $100,000 if they come in second. So there is a cash prize incentive that could maybe make our players like Jizzle James, maybe it makes him stay. I don't know. So I'm going to say as long as they're playing basketball, I'm going to cheer for them to win games, I guess. But winning this tournament means absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. As far as what's more embarrassing,
you can't lose the first game.
I mean, if you lose to DePaul, if you lose to DePaul after a 6-month hiatus, it's a joke. So.
You got to lose to a real team.
Yeah, like they don't really play one though. I mean, it's Oregon State versus UCF after that. Wes is at
least Oregon State has a conference.
Yeah, that's what they say. It's them and who? What
Washington State. They play 6 times a year.
They're both in this tournament, actually.
Oh, very nice.
They're both in this tournament. So yeah, if UC beats DePaul and they lose to UCF, I mean it's just a nothing burger. I'm gonna say it's more embarrassing to lose to DePaul in the first round.
Yeah.
Than to win it all.
You could lose to Nova without a coach in the semifinals and be okay.
Yeah, maybe
just brand name.
Yeah, it's this. Listen, it's frustrating to talk about because I think there were higher expectations for this team than this, and it sucks that you have to play in an event like that.
They shouldn't get money for winning the crown. They should have to pay a lot of NIL money to play in the crown. Like, there's no way we should be rewarding these. Like, they're going to get NIL money for winning the crown, and Florida's going to win the national championship. It's going to cost them money.
Yeah.
Let's reallocate some funds.
That's tough. Maybe
So,
we'll play Tulane in the semis.
That'd be cool. Whoosh.
We can see what
That
happens.
was the
is, like,
green wave.
I know, I heard it.
there's some teams that make these postseasons that, like, it's a big deal to them if they can get a win or two, or actually win the NIT or win the win the crown. And then there's others, like you find yourself in, like Cincinnati, who's like, we don't really want to be in this. We have to be here. It's going to be embarrassing if we lose, and if we win, we're celebrating winning a tournament that was not our end goal. Like, we should not be here. We should be, in the NCAA tournament. So it's going to feel weird no matter what. But then what happens is when you're not really completely all in on these tournaments, you're going to go up against a DePaul who, by the way, DePaul beating Cincinnati, DePaul winning a game in the crown, that's a much bigger deal to that program than if Cincinnati wins. Well, if you win in the crown, it's like, whatever, let's just hurry up and wrap this tournament up as fast as we can. But if you lose in it, it's embarrassing. DePaul, if they lose, they're supposed to. If they win a game or two, that's a nice little way to close out, first-year head coach with Holtman with them. So there's that. But, Jake, you being an SEC fan, we run into this in bowl season all the time. UCF's a prime example. Years ago when they played their national championship season, when they beat Auburn in the bowl game. Now, this is one thing that SEC haters constantly mock. And I don't know why we mock things. I know why we mock it. When you guys say things that make sense, we just mock it. It just means more. We know it means more in the SEC, but we mock it. All right? Like, we know deep down as a fan of a Big Ten team, and you're kind of both, I guess you're in the middle, but we know it means more in the SEC. It's not that it doesn't mean much to Ohio State, but we know the conference as a whole, it means everything over there. You can't say it means everything to the Big Ten. There's so many programs that are like, yeah, whatever, another crappy year. But that UCF year when they played Auburn has aspirations to be a playoff contending team, an SEC championship contending team. They hate the non-playoff bowl games. It is what it is. And then you got to run into UCF. UCF felt slighted. They wanted to beat an SEC school because we said you missed the playoff because you didn't play anybody. Well, now you get to play somebody to close out the season in a meaningless bowl game. Meaningless to Auburn because they don't care about UCF. They don't care about this non-playoff bowl game. So they don't approach it with the same intensity or mindset that UCF does. So, of course, UCF wins, and then, of course, UCF brags that we beat an SEC school, and then SEC Auburn comes out, well, we didn't. I mean, it's UCF. It's not the playoff. I mean, we win, so what? What does that really do for us, right? Like, that mindset is real. It exists. It makes sense. I have no clue why we mock it. People mock the SEC all the time and say, oh, well, they're just going to say it didn't matter. It's a meaningless bowl game. It is. It's a meaningless bowl game. I don't know why people try to discredit that and act like that's not a mental or not a thing that mentally exists in these matchups.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's certainly a case, and I think it would probably be the case for UC in all these games. I mean, there's no way these players committed to UC with any intention of playing in the crown. So how do you get excited for these games? And like you said, yeah, I mean, DePaul would be, legitimately celebrating every time they advance in this tournament. So, yeah, you're absolutely going up against an uphill battle here, and that's why we usually see, I think college basketball is a little bit different. We usually see one seeds win, the NIT and everything along those lines, but I don't think you're going to have a lot of guys that are, really getting excited to go play in the crown.
Again, the cash prize helps. It's just
certainly does. Does that go to the players or does that go to the university for next year?
I think it's the players. I think it's
okay.
That's
a big difference.
It's the NIL collective. I'm pretty sure for this year. I think I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that would be the only incentive for them staying to play.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, I think Wes said everybody's coming back to play in this event, which is crazy to me. But that has to be the only reason. They wouldn't be staying to play and not accepting $750,000 offers from Texas or whoever is coming into the table if they didn't have a cash prize that they were playing for. So I hope that's I hope that's the case. They get it for this year or whatever. But we'll see. We'll see. The crown again. What's that next Tuesday? April 1st. Is that next Tuesday? Let me see.
I think it's right before Feast Week.
A week from today.
Yeah, it's a week from today. A week from today. They'll be playing in the historic Crown Invitational. One of the greatest. By the way, I'm excited. Should we do a live stream for that?
I think you should.
DePaul next Tuesday. See you there.
I will get unbranded Crown merch. No teams. But if I could just rep the tournament.
I just want a crown.
Okay.
I don't care about the teams. I don't care about the tournament. I just want a crown.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Go to the Hamilton Burger King and get a lot more.
That's what I'll do. That's what we'll do. We'll have to go. We'll all wear crowns that day. Casey's in.
Yep, I'm in.
I'm going to their website now to see if they actually have like apparel.
If there
I
is
think-
the Crown merch, I will spend money on it.
That's the goal. I'm looking hard. I don't see anything yet, but there has to be, right? This is too big of a deal to not have.
I googled the historic Crown basketball tournament, but nothing came up.
Nothing showed up for that. Nothing. You didn't get a result for that.
Their website's cool. You could download the bracket. I mean, there's a lot of cool little features
Wow.
on this website.
Should we get one of those massive brackets and put it like right there?
How have we missed the green screen behind Casey being the Crown bracket for the last
We should
for the last week?
We should do that.
It's gonna have to be an updated Crown bracket.
We'll work on that.
In the middle of the Final Four, we're a Crown show.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Graphic.
Oh.
What? What we
Nope.
got?
You're good. You're good.
You're
good.
back now.
You're back. You're back.
Well, that's a sign we should probably wrap up. This is around the time yesterday that a transformer blew and our whole station.
That was
went
fun.
out.
That was
So,
fun.
Yeah.
That happened a couple times at my old station.
It's always, positive sign there. All right. Anything else to wrap up today? We got anything else? We got today? Box lunch? Anything coming up?
I was going to have a couple pictures of Sean Miller putting the horns up, and I was going to put it, but I'm not in a trolling mood today, so I'm not going to do that. I want it to be known that I was going to do it, but I said, Elliot, you're better than this. Don't. So I didn't do it.
I see this.
I went that on the record.
That's a big man.
The Cincinnati Enquirer, Jacob, continuing to put out little headlines. Xavier took a chance on Sean Miller, and he betrayed them.
Oh.
That's my favorite narrative coming out of all of
I think you guys are taking that a little bit weird, though, because he did. I mean, I understand the narrative that every coach is going to leave, and we all know that. But he did say Xavier's my home, and he just built a house like a
When
week.
Ben McCullum left Drake to go to Iowa, was that a backstabbing Drake?
But you're comparing Drake to Xavier.
Brother,
That's-
get outside the 275 loop and tell me Xavier's a big deal.
I think there's a little bit of a difference between Drake and Xavier, a little bit. So I understand how Xavier fans took it personally.
Oh, I understand Xavier fans taking it personally. It's sports. You take everything personally. It doesn't mean that they should.
Well, yeah, but you just said that you could. So yeah, yeah,
Every fan's biased to their own team.
I guess.
Yeah,
Xavier's better than Drake. Xavier's better than Drake.
They are.
Okay, fine.
They
We'll end it
are.
with that. We can all agree
Dayton.
Xavier better than Drake. Xavier is better than Dayton. That's not even up for debate.
You see?
Maybe.
Not this year.
UC's never better than Drake.
I saw that. I think we said that stat at the beginning of the tournament where Xavier has the fourth most NCAA tournament appearances without a Final Four appearance. So they dance a lot.
Chase Wellman in our chat. Drake advanced this year. Xavier didn't.
Yeah, I mean UC hasn't advanced. I
No, they
literally
did
don't
advance.
remember. I don't
They
even
did
remember.
advance.
I almost got you.
They did advance. They won the first four, baby.
That
was
game is
drunk
still a
with that.
top 3 game of this tournament, by the way. This tournament stunk. Absolute garbage tournament so far.
I mean, Sean Miller had to be so upset at the end of that game.
What, that he beat his team?
Yeah.
I don't know. That whole thing's weird to me because I've done serious research on the Xavier team celebrating and his arms just stay folded.
You had screenshots
I
today.
did have screenshots. I was looking at it. I'm like, this guy's crazy.
It was a weird reaction.
But nonetheless, that's it. Now we're done.
Already 0-1 as Texas head coach. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, real quick, this is
Yep.
how we'll end it. Now we'll end it. I lost the Papa Shot Championship.
I did hear the update. Yeah.
I lost the Papa Shot Championship. I went to Oakley Greens this weekend to compete, and I lost. So to Sean Connor,
Asterisk.
there is an asterisk. That guy was a ringer. That guy did not miss a single shot. Did not miss one.
Put up an unreal score.
Like it was, he beat the field by 40 points. It wasn't even remotely close.
It was one of these bad boys.
It was.
It's toss.
You just can't compete with that. You just can't compete with it.
No.
So next year we'll be trying to go to Vegas again. See
What
you
if
guys
you
then.
just showed up?
To Vegas?
If you walked in and you were like, "Hey, I'm doing the pop."
Yeah, I mean the security wasn't that great, so I think I could probably sneak in.
There's no way. There's
could
no
probably
way
sneak
they
in.
keep you out.
Disappointing. You could have watched The Crown while competing You really missed out. You really missed it.
You actually probably a good thing you're not going
that would
because
be
there's
so
no
funny.
way they have the Crown on any TVs there.
None.
In all of Vegas.
0. What channel is that on? I still don't even know.
You have to
Kidding?
go live in Vegas.
Time out. I heard that the Sphere in Vegas is just the bracket of the
The
crowd.
outside.
Yeah.
That'd be good stuff. That'd be good stuff.
All right, we're done. We'll do this again tomorrow. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.